Okay, let's pray. Father, thanks for my brothers and sisters there in South Africa, and we celebrate you and worship you for all the work that you're doing around the world, as we've been talking about with different people groups and so many people migrating to different countries for different reasons, whether it be war or famine or political persecution. And so we just pray that that would continue, that more churches would continue to be planted, existing churches would continue to be revitalized, and we pray for more of that in South Africa as well. Um, just that you would continue to deepen and mature your church there, as well as plant new works in new neighborhoods and new areas of cities, so that more people can be reached and healed and transformed by Jesus. Um, So I pray that this conversation we have now would be helpful in that direction, that um, just these churches would be strengthened as we talk about shared leadership and um, how to get more people involved and how to use their gifts and how to use their personalities um, and to work together as a family. So to share the burden, to share leadership. Um, in in our churches. So pray that this conversation would be helpful, fruitful, encouraging for that. So Father, lead us, and we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, well, I would love to. We will get to the theme of shared leadership, but before that, I wanted to see if you've got anything from maybe the last two calls, if you can remember them. Last call, we talked about those five different relational environments. Um, And the call before that, we talked about just kind of missional assessment. How do we measure growth and uh, fruit in the lives of our people and the lives of our communities in terms of engaging lost people and deepening our relationship with lost people? So that was two conversations ago. Again, last conversation was about those five different relational environments and how different people different people are impacted at different times in different ways by different relational dynamics. So I don't know if you've given more thought to that or have even seen that play out over the last month or two. So would love to hear any stories, observations from any of that.
Happy to share a little bit. We recently had our leaders feedback kind of reflection session on 2022, especially on the structures, on what's been challenging and what's been working in both in DNA groups and missional communities and our Sunday gatherings. And it's been immensely encouraging to see how there is a bit of a shift even amongst the leadership on what it means to be a leader, less of an academic teacher and more of a person that wants to model and wants to share stories. Vicus and I actually chatted about this a couple of days ago, and so tonight's topic is going to be apt as well in that, and how to lead and what it means to lead well. But I think the other thing that's been encouraging is people are getting platforms to share their stories, and people are sharing more of themselves, and probably still learning and figuring out what that would look like in the different relational environments. But at least within the church community, we're slowly seeing that happening in a more natural way, where we can give either structural platforms to that, whether it's on a Sunday service or some other events, but then also in a more natural way, people are starting to share. And it's not just the victorious sharing, it's more of a natural, this is what I'm going through, and these are some of the things that I'm wrestling with and journeying with.
Great.
And it's becoming more of a culture, which has been very encouraging. Everyone's been encountering different challenges even in a post-COVID world, one thing that really stuck out with us is that pre-COVID, we were used to having weekly Bible studies, and everyone could commit to that. Post-COVID, and I don't know if this is true in the whole of South Africa or in other parts of the world, but people struggle to commit or even to get to events, whether it's once every 2 weeks or whatever the frequency is. But our leaders, and instead of just seeing it as a challenge, they wanted more. They want more of these interactions. They want to, even though they recognize that even they themselves are tired and they've got challenges meeting together, there is this desire to share life more with one another, and that's just been immensely encouraging. And in the face of all the other challenges that we've been facing and that people have been facing and struggling to get together and build relationships and have people over, the desire is there, and it's almost like it clicked now at the end of year 2 for us, where people are actually buying in to not just having a Bible study to equip ourselves, but how to share those lives with one another and the people around us. And so it's like, man, we're growing. We're not there yet. We're not out of the diapers yet, but there's some stuff that's clicking, and that's been exciting.
That's awesome. Well, I would say actually you are out of the diapers because this what you just described there, yeah, I I love it. What you were saying at the beginning with people sharing, learning to share their stories and it happening more often and happening more naturally and happening in a deeper way. That's the primary work. That's not like a secondary thing. Like I think as we think about in terms of discipleship and deepening relationship and Christ likeness, a big part of that, a central part of that is what you're describing. Is the communication and the deep sharing of our hearts, the deep sharing of our stories, what's going on, what's good, what's not good, what needs the gospel, what needs healing, what needs help. Um, and so, and then that always, hopefully is growing at two levels. It's growing internally amongst each other as Christians. So part of, we've talked about it many times, part of what it means to be good family is that deeper, vulnerable, heart level communication and support and speaking truth into each other's, into the details of each other's lives, challenges of each other's lives. But then the more that is happening internally amongst us, it's almost like it's practice, even though that's not our motivation for doing it. We do it because that's how we become more like Christ and be good family. But it's almost like we're also practicing as we do that to be able to communicate better with lost people. Because if we can't communicate deeply with each other as Christians, that's never going to happen with lost people. So because with lost people, it's even more, it's just more challenging. It's more sensitive. We have to be more careful. We have to be more intentional with lost people to both get deeper into their story as well as having opportunities to share from our story. So man, hearing you say you're making progress in that, like that's not just little progress. To encourage you, that's big progress. Um, so that's good stuff. Wanted to comment too. You said you don't know if it's a South Africa thing or yep. Universally, what I see coming out of COVID is I don't know why exactly. There's probably somebody starting to write some articles and books about it, but COVID seemed to have produced um, something in people generally where there's even less commitment. There's less.
Yeah.
I've been using the word capacity. It seems like it seems like people have less less general capacity just for life and managing life, but definitely less relational capacity. And so that has all kinds of practical implications. Like you said, consistency, just even consistency in simpler forms of communication. Like I'm kind of shocked. I mean, some close friends of mine that I've known for years, their their texting patterns and their emailing patterns. Okay, so basic forms of communication have definitely decreased. Less frequency, harder to get them to respond to simple questions that would take them like 60 seconds to respond to. I've got friends. I've got friends I'll put a question out to or a request out to, and I might not hear back for like 2 weeks.
Wow.
It's like, what? How's that possible? You know,
Wow.
like, so, but I'm attributing it to this phenomena that COVID seemed to sap, you know, diminish people's relational capacity. So
That's it.
so anyway, that's part of our new reality, South Africa and here in the US and Europe,
Wow.
you know, same thing. People I talk to, what I see and hear from churches I work with in Europe and other places. So, but one thing I wanted to say as a solution or a partial answer is to say, you know, we've talked a lot about food and meals together, and it kind of becomes a joke. We talk so much about food and eating together. I really think that even now, even more than ever, is an attractive, life-giving desire that people have.
Yeah.
And so if people feel like they have to go to another meeting, that feels like I don't need another one of those this week. I just came out of a day full of meetings or 3 days full of meetings, and now you're wanting me to come to another meeting.
It's good.
Right? So if what we're doing as churches feels like, even if not, that's not our intention, if it feels like a meeting, that's not going to be motivating for people. And so I think we've again got to create these relational experiences that are centered around food, that are centered around a meal, that are enjoyable and life-giving and encouraging, like good food around the table with good conversation and people caring for each other. Like even with people's diminished relational capacity, I think that what I'm describing is a constant. People are never going to get tired of that. People are never going to lose their desire for that. So we have to say, okay, is that consistent? Is that representative of the life of our communities? That when they meet, they have that kind of life-giving, that kind of life-giving nature to them. So basically meeting versus meal. Meeting versus meal. So what do you guys think? For the South African context, your context, comment on that.
Maybe just echo Reynard, the struggle is real.
It's good to hear it's not just us. So
not just you.
Not at all.
Sound like you're a bit further than us. No, I think. Look, I think it's been, and that's why Todd, I think this theme of this discussion is important. It's been difficult to get people to own anything historically, and now we were just talking. We've been discussing over the last few days the very concept of being too busy is actually a bit of a deception. You're actually never too busy. The fact is you choose to prioritize certain things.
Yep.
And I think COVID has played into a tendency amongst urban South Africans, and you'll probably tell me it's not necessary to make such a tight qualification, but we really struggle to commit to anything really. And COVID, well, not COVID, let's not blame COVID. The Lord has used this trial, this global trial, to show us that our hearts are really not as committed as we thought they were. And I mean, I agree. I think calling people out to a physical meeting where you have to actually plan your time, get in your car, drive or walk or whatever you're doing, has a much better outcome than just moving from one meeting to the other. But yes, we are also, I don't think it's changed per se from my experience. I think people have just come out with more of a blasé attitude towards that level of commitment.
Well said. Well said. Yep, I would agree. I would agree with that. The COVID, the 2 year, however long it's been, the 2 year COVID experience has been revealing. And so, but that's the context we've been placed in, and that we have to work with. And so again, the question is, how do we call people beyond that? How do we invite people beyond that, challenge them beyond that? Yeah. So that's our work as disciplers and shepherds and missionaries. Because you kind of alluded to it. You didn't use this word, I don't think, but I mean, it has revealed again, I'll say part of it. I don't want to make a complete stereotype, but basically the selfishness, the selfishness, the self-centeredness that's in us as humans. So we know that's the biblical story from the beginning, is we gravitate towards self. What's easy, comfortable, safe, low commitment, away from hard work, away from responsibility. That's the human condition. So other comments, observations?
I'm going to jump in again just to kind of voice the flip side of that as well. One of our leaders actually said it well. I think you guys are 100% right in the sense that it obviously reveals and it open up some hidden idols and sin. But we had one leader that said, and Todd, you used the word, and that's exactly the word that he used. It's just like, man, he doesn't feel like he's got the emotional capacity to engage. And so at the end of the meeting, he was adamant, I think we need more, and I want more engagements. I want to meet more with people. And I was like, but at the beginning of the meeting, you said you needed less because you don't have capacity. It's like, yes, but I realized this is the thing that I need. And so I think that there is a bit of a dualism happening within people. So there's definitely sin and selfishness. But I think we do need to recognize that there's an emotional toll that is definitely maybe diminishing is the word that you used as well, people's capacity. And so I think the creative question then for leaders, instead of just saying, hey, you guys need to be better and pull up your socks and do more, it is that missionary mindset. It is, isn't it, of, where can we also meet people where they're at? How can we remove some of the barriers? And Todd, this was already what you were getting at. It's like, okay, food, let's get them with food and things that don't feel like effort, but it was challenging us as leaders, and we didn't have an exact answer. We've got some ideas for next year, but we definitely recognize this pattern where some people in the same sentence would say, there's too much, I can't engage, but I want more. we had this a couple of times, and so it's a good thing for us to almost recognize that people are in that in between. So there has to be a push and pull there.
Yeah.
Hey, you need to get off your seat, and also recognize, hey, I also recognize that it's tough and there's some diminishing capacity, as you put it, Todd, which is interesting.
Yep.
Did right.
Yep. Great comment. So it actually ties in that last comments tie in great to this theme of shared leadership, because it's a big part of the answer to this. It's not completely, but a big part of the answer to this, I believe, is good shared leadership. And I say that when I think of that, I'm thinking about it at a few different levels. Partially because we talk about that diminished relational capacity. If that's going to increase, you have to ask what's going to increase it. If people don't have much emotional, relational motivation and capacity right now, how's that going to change? How's it going to grow? Part of it is creating a leadership culture in each of your communities, again, that is motivating. I was with this church plant in the Czech Republic last week. So I was in England, which we were talking about earlier, and then I was in the Czech Republic where I used to live, and working with the church plant there. And was 4 couples, okay, so 4 Czech couples, and they were talking about their struggles as a team, and they basically, one of the women just admitted, she said, it doesn't feel like we're a very good family with each other. It was a big statement to admit, and so, and because of that, because we don't have that kind of relational commitment and encouragement and help and support that feels like a family, she said it's demotivating. It when the people responsible for a community, a missional community, a small group, or a whole church are not working together in such a way that it's life-giving, it diminishes relational capacity, because they're not even motivated to work with each other very well. So if they're not motivated to work with each other very well, how are they going to care for other Christians very well? They're probably not. And then how are they going to care for non-Christians very well? They're especially not. See, do you see why this is so key? If there's not a healthy shared leadership at the center of a community, in the center of a church, at the top level, it's gonna affect everything. It's gonna affect all the relationships in a church. So she, after saying that negative, or not negative, that real comment, that fair comment about their leadership team, she said, it was interesting how she described it. She said, when we're together and we're leading this thing together, I want to be able to act. She used the word goofy. It was just an example. She said, I want to be able to act goofy with you like you're truly like brothers and sisters. I want to have that kind of freedom. I want to have that kind of fun. I want to have that kind of communication with each other that feels like that, because that is life-giving. When we're having fun together and talking together with that vulnerability and that, again, I'll use the word freedom with each other, it's life-giving. But when that's lacking, again, it doesn't feel like family. It feels like when we come together, it feels like a meeting. And that just sucks the life out of people. And she was saying, it sucks the life out of me. Um, so it was a really profound moment, I think, for their team, for her to admit that and to speak it out to the team. And so I think I think it's gonna have I think it's gonna produce really good fruit in their team in the coming months, because I think they all realized, yeah, we've got to grow in this, and it requires a different level of communication, requires a different level of commitment, requires a different way of relating. Again, um, formal meeting, trying to like lead an organization versus a group of people that are good friends and committed to each other, that are trying to lead this relational work, not a formal organizational work, but a informal relational work. That's just such a difference. And now that I speak that out, I think that's another big. I think that's another big. I worked with this big Anglican church in Southern England last week, and the main, what do they call them there? A vicar, a vicar or a rector. I don't even know the Anglican language, but you could tell as I was talking, um, what I was describing, this life together as family, together on mission, versus what he's doing, leading this formal traditional organization that they call a church. You could see even in some of his comments that that current thing he's leading is just sucking the life out of him, because it's this formal organization with meetings and programs, and you just keep you just keep reproducing more meetings and programs, and you assess like that. You measure success by the meetings and the programs and how many people are showing up to the meetings and the programs, and just the relational, the deeper, life-giving, fun um, stuff is just missing. So in our churches, man, we've got to fight against it, because again, we've got, for a lot of us that grew up in traditional churches, that's the battle, is to default back to meetings and programs and just reproducing this meeting monster, versus saying, no, God's called us to a relational thing. Relationship with him, relationship with each other like family, relationship with lost people like friends. It's all relational. It's meant to be. It's meant to be relation. All of it's meant to be relational. Do we need a little structure for that? Yeah. Do we need, but it's meant to be relational, not program, not meeting. So, so again, back to our big idea. Shared leadership is required to do that well. Shared leadership, again, is, when it's functioning in a healthy way, is a relational thing, where a core group of people are in deep relationship with each other and with God, so that they can care for other Christians in a similar way, and then extend that even further to non-Christians. But it starts with that core group of people and the strength and the health and the capacity that they're experiencing together. So let me make a few more comments, and I want to hear some feedback. I sent you a document, basically. If you don't have something like this, I would encourage you, please create something like this in the next 2 or 3 months. It can be much simpler than this. But I think part of the challenge a lot of times when we talk to people about shared leadership or leading something, they're not clear on what that means specifically. We think about it all the time, so it's clear in our minds, but it is not clear in their minds. So even when we invite people into helping lead a community, they don't know what that means. They don't know what that means practically. They don't know what the responsibilities would be. They don't know what the expectations would be. They don't know what the time commitment would be. We assume way too much. So what this role description does, and you can call it, you know, I don't care what you call it. If something better works in South African context, great. But basically, it's painting a clear picture for your people of what it means to come and take responsibility for a community. Does that make sense? Most churches I work with, most ministries I work with don't have it. And it's very damaging or it's very costly because they don't have it. Because they haven't clearly defined what it looks like to share leadership and to work together to make disciples and to influence lost people. So we've got to be clear what the expectations are, what the responsibilities are, what the time commitment is. We've got to somehow put that on a piece of paper so that everybody's clear about it. They're not wondering. And then one other real practical thing, so many churches and ministries I work with are always talking about the shortage of leaders they have. Oh man, we need more leaders. We don't have enough leaders. We need more help. Part of it is connected with this. The reason churches lack leaders is because when they talk about leadership, it scares most people away. Because they think it's 10 times bigger than it really is. Does that make sense? They hear leader and it's like, oh, I'm not a leader. It's like, you want me to lead something? I can't lead anything. Nope, not me. I'm an introvert. I can't, all the excuses. I'm too young. I'm too old. I'm too busy. I'm too whatever. I can't lead something. But part of the problem is we've never clearly defined what it looks like to be part of a community that is sharing responsibility, sharing leadership, where they could look at it some simple categories, some simple expectations on paper and say, oh, if that's what it is, I could do that. I thought it was this. But now what you're describing here, like I could do that. I've got time for that. I've got, some gifting. I could play a part in that. I could help out with that. But we don't do that very well often in our ministries and churches. And so we talk about leadership and helping lead things, lead communities, and it pushes most people away. It scares most people away. Feedback, questions.
Thanks, Todd. Maybe some initial feedback. The shared leadership model, specifically, I think in a missional community, is something that we've seen in our missional community this year was lacking, and really needing others that, although we knew, I think this year that they were there, that share the culture and really what we want to create by this community. So thanks. This is a great topic. I think some of my questions, so the first thing, the concept of core group can make people feel uncomfortable. Not sure if that's just me, but I've picked up on that. Like if you've got this bigger community and now you're going to have the core group, can create some uncomfortableness in people. Maybe just share what you think of that and where the thinking is wrong if kind of the conversation leads that. But maybe the more important question is practically, like in your community, how would this play out? Like would you at times get together separately with the shared leadership of the community and discuss certain things that you wouldn't in the bigger community. How do you make sure that there's actually that relationship and thinking and dreaming about the community with the core group?
Yeah, great. I'll make a couple comments, and if I don't fully answer your question, we can come back to it. But why? I also wanted to clarify, like, why does it create discomfort, or why do you think it does for people?
I think it can create this. Actually, my wife was whispering this in my ears, and maybe she should say it, but it
I
can
saw
create
it.
this
I saw
idea
her
that some
whispering.
people are in and some are out, right? And in what qualifies it to be in and what out, and then maybe our context again, our community isn't super big, right? Will be maybe 14, 12 people, and eventually you'll probably look at like maybe close to half of it would be core and the others not. So I think that's maybe that uncomfortableness. I think that's the biggest reason behind that.
Okay. Well, that whole idea of who's in and who's out, that's something they're determining more than you're determining. And so I think they need, first of all, need to understand that it seems like Jesus was doing that in different ways all the time. It was like, hey, if you want to follow me, if you want to be part of this, if you want to take responsibility, if you want to be part of this leadership team, come die. Come lay down your life. Come take up your cross. Follow me. So Jesus was putting the invitation out there all the time, and we need to also. But I think when we talk about core, we need to equate it mostly with responsibility. It's not saying like who are the super Christians here, or who think they're the super Christians, or who have we determined are the super Christians. It's not that at all. Again, coming back to Jesus, I think he consistently was making the invitation, and he was basically saying, who wants to be part of this? Who wants to help? Who wants to take some responsibility for this work, for this ministry? And if people feel called to that, then I think you can invite them into the core team. See, one of the things about shared leadership is you can invite people in, or you can invite people into it when they're still pretty young Christians, even I would say some baby Christians. You can invite them into helping and taking some responsibility and be part of the core very early, because it's not based on like Bible knowledge. It's not based on if they've been through 25 hours of training. It seems like Jesus' expectation was, do they want to make me the center of their life? Do they want to work together and live together and function like a community, like a family? Second thing. And then do they want to fish? Do they want to fish together for lost people? Remember Jesus talking about that in Luke 5. We're going to fish for men. That's the goal. We're going to fish for men. We're going to make more disciples. Do you want to do that? If you want to do that, come join us. So do they love Jesus? Do they want to love each other like family? Do they want to love lost people? Those are the requirements. So don't add 10 other requirements to it. What it means to be part of a core team or a shared leadership. But again, just like Jesus did, he gave them appropriate responsibility based on their maturity. So we can invite them into core leadership while giving them appropriate responsibility based on their maturity. And if we do that, it's actually going to create a leadership pipeline where people are growing up into maturity and growing up into leadership faster. And you don't, again, it's a huge problem in most churches, most ministries. Because they're so slow to invite people into taking responsibility, they wonder what, that's why they have a lack of leaders all the time. That's why they can't multiply communities, because the process of people growing to maturity and growing in their leadership skills is so slow with the traditional model of take them through a 2-year process of classes. And when they've jumped through the classes and they've got enough knowledge here, now they're ready. There's no biblical example of that, by the way. Biblical example for Jesus was, let's go do it. Let's go do it together. You guys don't have a clue. Luke 5, you guys are babies, but we're gonna get going, and we're gonna try, and we're gonna experience it, and we're gonna love people, and we're gonna serve people, and we're gonna sacrifice together, and we're gonna experience all of that. That's how you're gonna grow up to be like me. I think that's what we see Jesus saying. I think it's what we see Jesus doing. And then I think it's what we see play out in the early church. So anyway, does that help redefine core? And maybe you need
Yeah, very
to,
much.
I
Thank
mean,
you.
you could also even change the language and stop using the word core and just say, I don't know, family. We want to invite you into this family, um, you know, this family dynamic that we need at the center of every community, that is going to take responsibility for the shepherding of the Christians in the community, and then the mission to lost people outside of the community. So, but we're going to, yeah, whatever you need to call it. Again, I don't know what fits your context, core or team or leadership, family, but again, relational responsibility. We're going to invite you into taking some relational responsibility, not meetings, not programs, not events. We're going to call you into, and then we're going to do it together. We're going to figure it out. We're going to figure out together how we share relational responsibility for the Christians around us and the non-Christians we're on mission to. So, what didn't I answer in your question?
No, thanks. I think one of the things that's really helpful in your answer there, Todd, is I think the concept of that being an invitation and not necessarily a selection. If I can oppose those two words, I think it's super helpful in the answer. And I think that in a sense, the kind of idea of inside outside, and it goes away immediately. And seeing actually how Jesus did model that is super helpful. Thanks for that, Todd.
Good. Very well said, by the way. Invitation versus selection. Again, I think Jesus was constantly inviting them, inviting the crowds to follow him, inviting them in to help this work of making more disciples. Brian Reinhardt, Christo, Celine. Comments.
Something that I can say I see now as striking looking through the document, Todd. So under leading a few, you've got reproducing yourself in your core. Now, if somebody gave me this and said, listen, we want you to be a missional community leader, and I got to this part, my question to myself and the person who gave it to me would be, do you have any idea if I've got any of this right myself? Do I have something to reproduce? But that gives me some direction in helping our potential leaders, because mean, it seems obvious to say, but I think we need to be a lot more intentional in equipping them, so giving them something to reproduce.
Good.
Which means building it in ourselves and reproducing ourselves in them, right? I mean, I guess that's
Good.
that's the logic of it. But I do
Can
think
I-
this is extremely helpful.
Okay. So let me comment on that, Brian. So again, just even how you stated that, the clarity when people know like what the goal is. Like you're inviting me into this leadership thing. What is it? What is it? What's the goal?
Yeah.
What am I trying to do? What are we doing together? When it's not clear, we shouldn't be surprised that people don't want to do it. They're not motivated to do it. They don't know how to do it because we haven't brought the kind of clarity needed to actually do it. So, but I wanted to say to the very first thing you said, when we think about reproducing ourselves and others, again, be careful with that idea that it's all about you doing it on your own. No, it's we working together to reproduce ourselves, the best parts of ourselves, to reproduce the best parts of ourselves in each other. And to do it all, obviously, with God's help, because we don't have any good parts without Him. So, any of the good parts that should be reproduced in others are the good parts that come from Him, are sustained by Him. And so, again, I think that's very freeing. But if we don't see that, it's going to be a little scary or a little discouraging to say, I'm not sure I have a lot that should be reproduced in others. But again, we together as a community, our different gifts, which we've all been given, our different personalities, again, are purposeful, given by God, our gifting, our personality, our stories, our experiences, all of that together is a very powerful thing. So we're trying to reproduce that, us together in each other.
And learning as we go.
And learning as we go. That's the point. Part of our primary identity is learners. What it means to be a disciple, actually. Same word, same, to be a disciple meant to be a learner, a student of a rabbi. So when Jesus called them, he was saying, come be my students. Come be learners. So we're similarly saying, hey, everybody, come be learners together. We're going to be learners together. We're going to create a community of learners. We're going to be students together of Jesus, our rabbi, still our rabbi, our teacher. Well, let's go on this journey of learning together. But again, some of that, how are we going to do that? When are we going to do that? Where are we going to do that? Has to be spelled out so that people understand some of the details. Because again, the big concept sounds great, but very general. Like, yeah, I want some of that, but what is that? How are we going to do that? Where are we going to do that? When are we going to do that? How often are we going to do that? If we don't bring some clarity to it on paper for people, it's a good concept that goes on, unexperienced. Christo, any thoughts for you on the campus student world?
Yeah, I think for us, in our missional community, we haven't really focused that much on the learning aspect. So like we are a community of disciples learning from the master, from Jesus. What we basically did is we in the first part of the year we told the stories, and that actually led to great conversations. But then I think because we didn't really have a game plan after the story stuff, it just became like us hanging out together every 2 weeks type of thing, which also had its benefits. But as you're mentioning now, like, ultimately we should be a community of learners. And I don't want to go to the other extreme of like turning it into like a Bible study where it's dictated by like our own assumptions of what being taught or educated is like. Everyone bring their notepads and pens and we're going to start doing, I love that. I love that image of Jesus just telling stories and asking questions while around the fire or at Peter's mom's house, or just something like that. I think is beautiful. But yeah, it kind of fits into what Vikas was saying about the core group, because I feel like my wife always uses this example, like, I don't know what exactly the wording is, but like if everyone is supposed to do something, then no one does it. So I think everyone felt like, hey, this is all our thing, we are all doing it, and ultimately like no one took real responsibility for like thinking through questions or thinking through, like, I think Uli did a great job. He's like the only one that really did that, Uli and Yolene. But I think no one else really knew what specifically they were supposed to do except to rock up at missional community, so besides obviously like bringing food. But I mean, I think that's definitely something that we can grow in, to become more learners together and be more specific as to what we can do to grow in our relationship with Jesus together instead of just hanging out.
Yeah, great. Be careful in how we define learning. It's a lot bigger than just the Bible study. Okay, so there is an aspect of biblical information, biblical truth that needs to be, assimilated into a person's life, obviously. But learning is so much bigger than that. Learning is learning how to host a good braai, biblical hospitality. We have a non-Christian, or she's maybe a baby Christian now. She just had a baby, a real baby, her first baby, and our community basically provided meals for her and her husband for like 2 weeks, worth of meals. Well, that type of care and servanthood by our community, that's some of the most important learning possible. Was that a Bible study? No, though we could connect it to a whole lot of biblical principles. But that idea of sharing and serving and being generous and being thoughtful about this new mom and her new baby, man, that's some important learning. So that the next time it happens to a neighbor or a coworker or a friend or some other lost person, our community is thinking, okay, this is another opportunity for us to serve, share, bless, help. How do we do that? How do we do that this time? We remember how we did it last time. How do we do it now this time? So the learning, again, is not just learning biblical information, it's learning all of the ways to walk like Jesus. So we have to define learning in that big, all of life, walking in the ways of Jesus way. So some of that is going to be formal teaching information, but a whole lot of it's going to be experiential. And again, it's going to involve how we help and how we serve and how we bless and how we feed and how we share and how we use our money and how all of that learning that increasingly looks more and more like Jesus. So you might want to say it like that to your people. Again, connecting it to, yes, learners, but we're learning to walk and live and become more like Jesus in every part of our lives. And again, theme of this call, we're doing it together. We're not solo learners. There's no, again, I just don't think that's a biblical picture that we're individual. We're meant to be individual learners or solo learners. We're meant to be a community of learners. We're meant to be a family of learners. So learning to walk in the ways of Jesus together. That's what we see Jesus do with the disciples. It's what we see with the early church. That's woven into everything that Paul's talking about in his letters all the time, is this community of learners. Again, sharing relational responsibility for each other and sharing relational responsibility to the lost people that they've been sent to. So, Brian, as you look at that document again, do you feel like some of those specific things that are spelled out there, are they helping you clarify, are they helping you think about how you could create a version of that that would fit your context?
Yeah, definitely. Most especially because we've to use the other word, we've selected people to to be leaders, and we haven't equipped them well up to this point. So in a very practical sense, I'm liking the utility of this. I'm also just thinking though, in the bigger picture. So when you say create shared ownership, how I relate to that is by saying what we do know is unless one of the key leaders does something, nothing happens. And I'm kind of looking for solutions to that problem, right? But I mean, am I reflecting your approach correctly, Todd, if I say your answer to that would be give people clear guidelines, come alongside them, walk along the road and show them what's expected, both by making it clear, which I think the document is designed to do, and also by modeling it. Because I guess the gap that we've got right now is we haven't really laid this out. We haven't said this is actually what's expected of you. Come and commit to it, invite you to commit to it. We're kind of like just sitting back and going, why won't people do anything?
Yeah. So I'd say yes and yes to what you just said, but I would say there's also an aspect of the more mature ones in a community, not just creating clear guidelines and expectations, not just modeling it. that too, but also, again, asking or even directing to very specific responsibilities. I mean, I do that with my kids all the time. I think that's what it looks like to be a good parent. Okay. I don't suggest to my girls. So I was talking to my oldest daughter last night. I don't just suggest to her that she needs to clean that stuff out of her closet. It's not a suggestion for her to, because she took a bunch of her stuff from her bedroom and she put it in one of our bathrooms. Well, last night, some of the other kids needed to use that bathroom and they couldn't use the bathroom because her clothes were in a pile in the bathroom. So I didn't suggest to her that when she gets home from school today that it might be a good idea. Man, we could use some help cleaning up that bathroom sometime. You think about it. You think about it, if you've got time, maybe it'd be great. That's not my conversation with her. Her name's Ella. I said, Ella, when you get home from school, that is the first thing you will do. Okay? That's what it means to be part of this family, to be a good family member, to be a responsible part of this family, is to keep that area clean. So we've got to be directive because, again, you've got a community of leaders. Some of them are more mature, some are less mature. You don't just make suggestions about what needs to happen. Sometimes you do, but sometimes you say very specifically, hey, Lydia, we're throwing this party on Saturday night. We need you to do this. We need you to be 30 minutes early. We need you to bring a salad. And then Lydia, I'm going to ask you to help take care of the kids for the first hour so that these other things can be accomplished. Does that make sense? So somebody like Lydia, she's a younger, we'll say, younger baby, less mature Christian. She actually wants and needs that kind of direction. Because if I or my wife does not give her that kind of direction, she wants to be helpful. She wants to help serve. She just doesn't know. She doesn't have that. She doesn't have the maturity yet to see all the pieces that need to happen. So my wife and I are directive in, a grace-filled way, like with our kids, to say, here's what needs to be done. We think you'd be great at doing those two things. And then we'll ask, Lydia, can you do those two things? Oh man, I'd love to. Love to get here early. I'll stay after. I'll help with the kids. I'll clean this up. I'll set this up. I will, so you understand what I'm describing here?
Yeah. So
every community is going to have 3, 4 that are more mature, more responsible. So they need to share responsibility by giving away that responsibility. But you need to properly give it away.
Yeah.
That's what good shared leadership is. It's not just put out a sign-up list for all the tasks and hope that somebody does it. That's where we get into trouble.
Yeah.
Because everybody else is assuming somebody else is going to do that. Oh, they'll do that. Oh, somebody will take care of that. Somebody will bring that. Somebody will clean that up. Somebody will take care of the kids. Somebody will plan that. Somebody, not me.
So it's that balance of inviting and directing, right? So
yeah.
And I guess it's a point of once somebody's reached a certain level of commitment. So in church, if you've got people who are, well, not necessarily members, but certainly if somebody's signed up membership, then we're asking certain things of you. If you're sitting on church leadership, we're asking certain things of you unapologetically. But always it's still balanced with an invitation to say, we need to go further. We need to do more than what we're currently doing, because we don't want to be slack in the Lord's work.
Yep. Again, I'll say it again. Many Christians don't, church leaders always get frustrated with people's lack of commitment and lack of helping and but it's often the leader's problem. It's not the follower's problem. It's actually not a lack of commitment. It's a lack of clarity and a lack of invitation from the leadership to not only invite them in and give them clear guidelines and model it for them, but to give them responsibility. Specific, not general, specific. So Stephen, we're meeting on Saturday night. Can you lead this part of the discussion? We want to talk about these three things on Saturday night. We're going to eat our meal. We're going to do something fun after the meal. And then Stephen, can you take responsibility for this part of it? Let me describe what should be, part of that discussion. Very clear, very specific. Or who's another one? Chad. Hey, Chad. I know we're going to have two of our non-Christian neighbors coming to the braai on Friday night. One of the families is coming for the first time. Chad, can you, when they come, can you help them feel welcome? Can you say hello to them? Can you get to know their story? So Chad's clear. He's not, as Christo said, just rocking up to the meeting. Chad's coming, going. I know there's going to be some new people there, and I've been asked to love them well and to help them feel part of the community. So Chad's not just rocking up, he's coming into it knowing very clearly, very specifically, how he can take relational responsibility for the evening, for the meal, for the party. See the difference?
Yeah.
Otherwise, again, so many people, they've got good intentions. So many people just come to things and they assume somebody else is going to do it all.
Yeah.
Because they've,
or it's just one or two leaders leading it and everyone else just pitches or doesn't pitch.
Yeah, and then we wonder why so many leaders burn out.
Yeah.
It's like because they just did 80% of the work. The 80-20 principle. 20% of the leaders, 20% of the people doing 80% of the work. That's so not biblical or healthy. It's like, how about if we get everybody sharing responsibility so that at the end of the night, nobody feels burnt out, nobody feels overburdened, everybody worked together, everybody played a part. And so at the end of the night, we're motivated to do that again next week or next weekend because it didn't kill us. It's like, man, what a great night. Great food, great conversation. Let's do that again soon. Not man. I hope we don't do that again for another month or 3 months.
Yeah.
The 80-20. Yeah, I see it again. It's a problem. It's a problem everywhere because so many churches and ministries don't share leadership well. So, well, hey, great conversation. My big challenge for you would be to sit down with some or all of your responsible people, your core leaders, whatever you're calling them, okay? But to create some form of leader description, leader guidelines, leader expectations, leader responsibilities. Put it together, keep it short, simple, clear, not more than a page. But create it together. Because then everybody will be more motivated because they created it together. They will be more motivated to reproduce it. But I think if you can come up with a version of this that fits your context, I think it will bear much fruit. It'll bear much fruit in the lives of the Christians. They'll be more encouraged. They'll be more motivated because it's clear. And then it's going to help them work together to care for a bunch of other people. So this would be worth you prioritizing over the next couple of months.
Definitely. Thanks, Todd. Very helpful.
Yep. Hey, let me pray for you. As with everything, we need constant help and direction for these kinds of details. So let me pray. Father, thanks for my brothers and sisters there and just their desire to love you and follow you and worship you with their lives. Pray that you would bless them for that and encourage them. Encourage them as your sons and daughters. And Father, I pray for each of them and their communities and their churches that you would help them make progress in these things in the next couple of months. That they'd be able to just help their people have clear guidelines, clear expectations about what it looks like to work together, to be good family together as core leaders or core family. So help them create these things, or if they already have something, to adjust these things to make it more helpful for their people. So please lead them. And even as they do this work, I pray that the whole process would be encouraging and would be just good learning for them. As we talked about, we're on this learning journey with you. And so I just pray that it would be really good learning for all of them. So Father, thanks for loving us so well again today, protecting us and providing for us. We love you and pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.